Christopher Nolan spent 2 decades creating Inception, and then people accused him of plagiarism. One of the most celebrated sci-fi movies ever made was suddenly at the center of accusations, leaving many people wondering whether Nolan's most original film was actually original at all. So, where did those accusations come from? In this video, we'll explore the complete story behind the making of Inception, the ideas that inspired it, the plagiarism controversy, and the truth behind one of cinema's most debated endings. Hi, this is 11 Slate. My story should be divided into 3 levels, just like the operation to plant an idea into Robert Fisher in the film itself. 3 main theories about the core meaning of Inception, each leading to the next. And just like the dreams inspired by Dominic Cobb, they don't necessarily have to be true, but may simply be clever tricks by masters trying to plant an idea in you. Which one? Well, let's take it step by step. We'll start with the first level of this tangled story. Let's call it Dream. After all, Inception was a long-standing dream of Christopher Nolan. While still a teenager and dreaming of making films, the future genius came up with the concept of Inception, a horror story about intruders who steal the dreams of the main characters. I think we won't have to look very long for the source of inspiration.
Want to suck the face?
No.
Yes, one of Christopher Nolan's inspirations was none other than Freddy Krueger. But interestingly, not the feature film A Nightmare on Elm Street, but the TV series Freddy's Nightmares, which aired from 1988 to 1990. That's where, for example, the idea of a dream within a dream came from. Quite often, characters in the series would seem to wake up, only for it to turn out that reality was deceptive. Of course, Freddy wasn't the only influence. Lucid dreaming was explored by the famous writer Jorge Luis Borges in several short stories, which also ended up in the hands of the young author. Little by little, Nolan began to construct the idea of shared dreaming, of entering dreams as a craft and of uneven flow of time between reality and the sleeping mind. From these reflections, the screenplay began to take shape, a film Christopher Nolan dreamed of making, but the time was not yet right. First, he had to prove that he was a director who could be trusted with such a complex and demanding subject for the audience as crimes committed in dreams. It is impossible without becoming tedious to pour that much exposition into a viewer in a movie theater and still keep them interested. How roles are distributed during an infiltration, how the process works, what rules must be followed. It's simply too much information. But then Nolan found a solution. Make the film a heist movie. A very convenient concept. You cannot make a heist film without thoroughly explaining the plan of the crime to the audience. This way, exposition turns from a tedious lecture into a narrative device that is essential to the genre. After the release of Insomnia, starring Robin Williams and Al Pacino, Christopher Nolan sat down to write the screenplay for Inception, a harsh noir thriller about robbing the human subconscious. Not very similar to the film we ultimately saw, is it? At first, Nolan wanted to populate the story with ruthless characters who would betray each other. The main character, Cobb, was supposed to be haunted in dreams by his dead partner, who had died because of him. But later, during the filming of The Dark Knight, while being away from his family, Nolan realized that the protagonist should not be motivated by greed, but by the desire to see his children again. And the dead partner turned into a wife, haunting the hero in his subconscious. Cobb became indirectly responsible for her death and can no longer forgive himself for it. She continues to pursue Dom during operations and puts the lives of all his accomplices at risk.
Killing him would just wake him up. But pain.
Christopher Nolan was inspired by this new direction of the story, and after the release of The Dark Knight, he was finally able to fulfill his long-held dream. The second part of the Batman trilogy grossed over $1 billion worldwide. Suddenly, Nolan became the kind of director who could dictate to studios what he would make next, not the other way around. And the genius chose Inception. This would be his first project for which he wrote the screenplay entirely on his own, without collaborators. A story conceived entirely by Nolan, not based on short stories, comics, or other films, as had been the case before. If you enjoy deep movie breakdowns like this, support the video with a like. Warner Brothers delighted allocated a budget of $160 million and promised Nolan full creative control. Major stars were cast in the lead roles. The main character, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, needs no introduction. His subconscious wife was portrayed by Marion Cotillard, who had recently won an Oscar for her role as Edith Piaf in La Vie en Rose. When Christopher Nolan realized that he had chosen a song by that very performer as the central musical theme, while also casting an actress who had won a prestigious award for portraying Piaf, he wanted to change the melody. Why burden viewers with extra associations that could distract them from immersion in the film? But composer Hans Zimmer talked him out of it. The track Non je ne regrette rien fit the film perfectly, and even became the inspiration for the central sound effect of Inception. Remember the several loud sounds heard throughout the movie? Those are the first notes of that very song, altered in pitch. Yes, returning to the stars, Hans Zimmer leading the soundtrack is no joke. You could be certain the composer would deliver at 100%. Overall, Warner Bros. Invested fully in Christopher Nolan's new film, and were confident in its success. The same could not be said for the director himself. In interviews, he recounts that after finishing the first half of the film, he was horrified by the result. One continuous stretch of suffocating exposition, explanation, and yet more rules of the film's internal logic. Nolan thought he had simply burned $160 million, just like a character in his previous film.
This town deserves a better class of criminal.
But thanks to the masterful work of editor Lee Smith, the process of teaching the audience became faster and more dynamic. How do you make a lecture engaging? Blow up a cafe and fold Paris into a tube. Break up monotonous dialogue with striking visuals. Not just tell that the subconscious attacks architects, show it. Nolan's genius lies in large part in the fact that he understands what the viewer wants and follows fairly simple rules that many creators often ignore. A film should show, not tell. As we know, Christopher Nolan's gamble paid off. Inception grossed $839 million worldwide. It won 4 Academy Awards and became permanently entrenched in countless critics' top lists. The central operation of the film's first level, to plant an idea, was a success. Audiences and studios alike saw Christopher Nolan as a true master of his craft, capable not only of working with ready-made scripts, but also of virtuously bringing his own stories to the screen. If we try to recall a specific moment, the meme-like phrase, "Nolan is a genius," began circulating widely precisely after Inception. That was the goal of the first level, to plant the idea of the author's genius, to open the door to full creative freedom and independence from studios, to make the films the director wants, not the ones sponsors order. But can a work like this really have only one deep layer? It's time to go further and not forget an important point. What we are seeing does not necessarily have to be the truth. And by the way, my channel already has a video about another famous Christopher Nolan film, The Dark Knight. You will get a detailed analysis of hidden details and the Joker's motivation. And yes, it definitely exists, even though the film lies to us and tries to prove the opposite. All the details are in the video on my channel. Be sure to watch it after this one. In the age of the information society, it's impossible to release a mass-loved product without facing accusations from a dissatisfied part of the audience. The same thing happened to Inception. Viewers on whom the implantation did not work noticed a very curious coincidence. Many moments in Nolan's film strongly resemble another dream-related project, Paprika, the final feature-length anime by cult director Satoshi Kon. Paprika was released in 2006, 4 years before Inception, and contained several very similar scenes. In fact, not just scenes, the overall concept itself seems to be taken from the anime, a device that allows people to enter other people's dreams and make them shared. A heroine who specializes in entering the subconscious, though for purely therapeutic purposes. Travel between different dream levels. Even the elevator descending into the depths of the mind looks as if it was taken straight from Paprika. Christopher Nolan has never hidden the sources of inspiration for his work. In the case of Inception, he mentioned Freddy Krueger, Borges' short stories, and even The Matrix as important reference points. According to Nolan, the snowy final battle is a direct homage to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, his favorite Bond film, but he never spoke about paprika, as if deliberately avoiding the topic. So, did he disguise his own crime with a heist movie? Did he hide dishonest motives behind the implantation of the idea of his own genius? This interpretation began to take root in the minds of some viewers. According to this view, there is no genius here at all, only a reworked concept taken from another author. In many interviews, Nolan has stated that he came up with the core of the story back in the 1980s and began working on the script in the 1990s, long before Paprika was released. That sounds like an alibi. There is one important detail. The dream-themed anime is an adaptation of a novel by Yasutaka Tsutsui, published in 1993. And here's the most interesting part. The novel was translated into English in 2003. When did Nolan, by his own account, begin active work on Inception? After the release of Insomnia, which came out in 2002. Also a remake, by the way. The timeline is uncomfortably close. This is where a conspiracy theory emerged among some viewers. Christopher Nolan is a thief presenting himself as a genius. Remember the striking scene with a fight inside the rotating hotel corridor? A very similar visual can be found in Paprika. Nolan also used ancient Greek myths as metaphors throughout the film. For example, the architect Ariadne, who designs labyrinths, is named after the mythological figure who helped Theseus escape the maze of the Minotaur. Paprika employs mythological imagery as well. For instance, the Oedipus motif and the transformation of the heroine into a sphinx. The parallels are undeniable. On the internet, you can find claims that Nolan either denied any connection to Paprika or, on the contrary, admitted that he watched the anime and admired how it visualized ideas he had long been developing. However, no interviews with such direct quotes actually exist. I checked. This is a textbook example of how the idea of Inception being plagiarism was implanted into the collective consciousness, so effectively that it is now impossible to trace where it originated.
The subject's mind can always trace the genesis of the idea. True inspiration's impossible to fake.
But no, Arthur, this time it works. I know the plagiarism theory has many supporters, and you're free to present your arguments in the comments. But I believe Nolan came up with Inception on his own. Stories about controlling dreams existed long before Paprika, both in cinema and literature. Little Nemo traveled through dreams. Episodes of Star Trek explored similar ideas. Even SpongeBob has visited the subconscious. Every film is invisibly woven from dozens of others. A creator is influenced by fleeting impressions from pop culture, personal experience, and emotions of all kinds. And if we are to accuse Nolan of plagiarism, then what should we say about Quentin Tarantino? What matters most is that Nolan pitched Inception to Warner Brothers long before Paprika was adapted for the screen, meaning the foundation of the concept already existed. You don't approach studio executives with an unfinished idea, even if you're Nolan. Though today I'm sure he could receive hundreds of millions simply by saying, "I was thinking of making a movie." But you know what Inception and Paprika truly have in common? The parallel between dreams and cinema. Hollywood is not called the Dream Factory for nothing. In Paprika, the heroine walks through movie theaters where films are projected inside dreams. Characters swing on vines like Tarzan, fighting with a guitar like in Roman Holiday, and even reference Bond films, though not Nolan's favorite snowy chase with George Lazenby, but the train fight between Sean Connery and Grant in From Russia with Love. Once we set aside the criminal framework, it is time to descend one level deeper and understand this. Inception is a cinema.
No way!
No, not cinema in its usual sense. This is a film about making a film, practically Christopher Nolan's memoirs disguised as an entertaining heist story. Many critics mention this subtext, that creating a controlled dream resembles creating a movie, but usually only in passing. Yet this is exactly where the main meaning of Inception is hidden. Look closely. Dominic Cobb's team can easily be imagined as a film crew. Leonardo DiCaprio's character is the director, controlling the creative side of the project, the overall vision, guiding the production process. Arthur, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, is the producer. He organizes everything while the director floats in creative clouds. Look at how they pitch the dream idea to Ken Watanabe's character, Saito.
The seed that we plant in this man's mind will grow into an idea. This idea will define him.
Of course not.
The director speaks in lofty, intuitive language that only he fully understands, while the producer clearly explains all the risks to the investor. Saito represents the studio executive, the financial backer. Having someone like that on your side can be extremely beneficial.
I bought the airline.
But at the same time, he can interfere with the creative process, putting pressure on both director and producer.
The only way to know you've done the job is if I want you with you.
And if the studio is ever in danger, just like Saito being wounded on the first level, the director will have to take any risk necessary to save the backers, just to make sure the film reaches theaters. Let's move on. Ariadne, played by Elliot Page, is the production designer, the one who builds the sets and defines the visual look of the dream. That is the film. Eames, played by Tom Hardy, is the actor, the star the audience sees. Charismatic, unpredictable, and constantly putting the producer in awkward situations with inflated demands.
You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling.
Yusuf, the chemist, is the cinematographer, the one who pulls the audience into the film through visuals. His chemicals and vials represent equipment, lenses, film stock, and technical tools. His task is to find the right formula for each situation, fully immersing the viewer in the illusion. And then there's Cillian Murphy's character, the target. The audience itself. During the film, we are deceived, placed in danger, then suddenly trusted with something deeply personal. We are made accomplices. Empathy is triggered, all in order to plant an idea. Which idea? That depends on the director. Even during an all-out action sequence like the snowy shootout in Inception, the viewer may suddenly encounter a childhood memory or an emotional moment from the past. Or, on the contrary, an unattainable dream. In a good film, the crew works so precisely that the viewer, without noticing direct manipulation, experiences the emotions embedded deep within the story. Remember how Inception ends? Edith Piaf's song starts playing, the very same song that served as the wake-up signal for Cobb's team. The film tells the audience, it's time to wake up. The dream is over, a stunningly elegant ending that confirms the third level of interpretation. In fact, this is Inception, a detailed metaphor for a director's everyday life, an allegorical explanation of his craft. Just compare Cobb's appearance to Nolan himself, the same clothing taste, even a similar hairstyle. Cobb is Nolan, and they share the same goal. What does Cobb want? To return to his children. The same motivation drove Nolan, who wanted to get back home after months of exhausting work on massive productions. For this goal, he saves studio executives with his films, brings profits, argues with colleagues, searches for the best solution, rewrites the script on the fly.
I think we run with Mr. Charles.
No,
Who's Mr. Charles?
bad idea.
And we're forgetting one crucial participant in any filmmaking process. Mal, played by Marion Cotillard. She doesn't exist in the real world, but inside the dream, inside the film. Her influence is overwhelming. Mal is the director's style, the authorial signature hidden in the subconscious. Invisible in everyday life, but unmistakable on screen. Directorial style can suddenly put a train in the middle of a city street, or introduce a shocking betrayal, like during Saito's first dream. For Tarantino, Mal would erupt into sudden violence, dancing with a razor like Michael Madsen. For Wes Anderson, she would line up characters in perfect symmetry. For Woody Allen, she would become an unfaithful wife rambling about abstract topics. Mal is the director's life experience, constantly haunting him and shaping the final film. Sometimes she interferes, but she also creates uniqueness. I'm certain Michael Bay's Mal is constantly trying to blow up everything in frame, forcing him to restrain his inner pyromaniac. Mal should not be confused with the generic subconscious projections attacking Cobb's team. Those are simply the everyday problems inherent to any production. Inception is Christopher Nolan's most cinephile film. Never before had he spoken so openly to the audience about cinema itself. And from here, we reach the conclusion. So, how does Inception end? The answer is simple. Cobb wakes up and returns home. A complete happy ending. Because this is Christopher Nolan, the man who longed to see his family during the grueling production of The Dark Knight. Being trapped in a dream would only happen if he chose endless work over his loved ones, remaining forever in the land of dreams. But Nolan is not that person. The entire film exists to convey his emotions, his love for his family, his desire to return to them. That's why Cobb wakes up and finds happiness. And the spinning top keeps spinning because it is a step toward the film's immortality. As I mentioned in my video about The Thing, open endings can frustrate viewers who crave closure, but they also generate endless debates, analyses, rewatches. They make people return again and again, searching for proof of the theory they prefer. That's why Nolan and editor Lee Smith searched for the perfect final frame, one where the top both seems ready to fall and keeps spinning. You can calculate whether it would fall using physics, or you can do what Cobb does. Look at the family. He doesn't wait for the top to fall. He sees his children. He sees their faces. He knows they are real. And Michael Caine eventually spoiled it all. In 2018, he revealed what Nolan told him. If Caine's character is in the scene, it's reality. That's it. Unless Nolan deceived everyone, which is unlikely, because if Cobb were trapped in limbo, the film's third-level idea would fail. And that idea is simple. Family matters most. No matter how intoxicating creativity is, no matter how tempting it is to stay forever in a dream, remember why you do it. This is Nolan's answer to the meaning of life from a devoted family man with 4 children and a marriage lasting nearly 30 years. And that worldview is his Mal. And a small announcement for future videos. Soon, the Ultimate History of Insidious franchise is coming to my channel. How does a series of very cheap horror films manage to stay afloat years later? Hidden behind the scenes details, the rules of the further, and the secret of Insidious that allows the franchise to remain profitable to this day. All of that in the future video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. So, it turns out that Inception has several meanings at once. On the surface, there is the realization of the director's dream, the creation of his dream epic, which he had conceived back when he was a teenager, and also an attempt to prove to studios that he is the master of the box office, and that he can perfect absolutely any idea, even the most difficult one to bring to life. Then, through the layer of suspicion surrounding the director himself, because surely everything cannot work out this well for him, doubts about his talent began to appear. About that famous Nolan genius. This layer allowed people to look more deeply at his work and see that Inception is a very personal film, reflecting the director's inner world, his fanatical pursuit of technical perfection, his architect's gaze that creates impossible worlds, and the true values Christopher Nolan follows. Only this is presented not through boring moralizing, but through a science fiction action film with a complex structure. And that is the genius of it, to pour your soul out to the viewer in such a way that they do not get bored and actually ask for more. And then return to this reflection again and again, finding yet another level of the dream for themselves. The next video is already on screen, so click it and keep watching. Or head over to the playlist with a huge collection of videos about other popular franchises. Thank you for watching. This is 11 Slate.